My name's Will, and this is Will Photo and Films, where I'm focusing on aspects of American regional histories with different lenses.
Being a Boy Scout is much more fun than most anything that I have done. You can learn some skills, climb some hills, do good deeds for those in need, play some ball, and that's not all.
For most of its history, the Boy Scouts of America has been the hallmark of Americana nostalgia, with its focus on providing children and teens the skills and experience that lasts a lifetime. One of their staying power in American minds is their positive and negative portrayals in pop culture, with their countless appearances throughout the 20th and 21st century. Boy Scouts of America is now a different organization than was started about 115 years ago, with them slowly allowing gay scouts into the main program after about 20 years of controversial. The controversy is so old that it got a South Park episode.
Hooray! See you, Dad!
Hey, are you parents gonna stand there all night? This meeting is for scouts only, you silly gooses!
Along with the dark past of the sexual abuse happening within the organization for most of its history, there is some good news, but the Boy Scouts of America is currently taking the tones for its past and trying to actively prevent it happening again. In 2020, the Boy Scouts of America wrote on their website that the victims agreed to the terms of a $2.4 billion settlement, along with Boy Scouts' ongoing commitment for better youth protection. And this would only address one of the two bigger issues facing the Boy Scouts of America in the last decade, with falling memberships because of the changing culture. Maybe because of changing youth culture with the times. I mean, an organization that's founded about 115 years ago is going to be very different with the needs for right now. And of course, they have taken some small steps to address that by letting gay boys into the program in 2013, with, of course, there was a small backlash with it. However, this was small change compared to what happened in 2017.
The Boy Scouts have begun admitting 3,000 girls into their ranks. 170 troops nationwide have begun a soft launch program after the organization revised its rules in October. This may make the virtue signalers feel good, but at what cost? Let's discuss that.
In 2017, the BSA made one of their biggest decisions in their 107-year existence was the inclusions of girls into their program. This brought out a surprising overall angry response from many people and groups, including the Girl Scouts of America, who viewed the BSA as cutting into their market. The main difference between the two organizations is being that the GSA has been more focused on girls in urban core, along with a progressive attitude since the 1970s, while the BSA has been more conservative with their program until recently. The backlash was simple. With the classic culture war rage baiting of this organization was meant for the boys, not for the girls. And there is a widespread hard belief for the BSA that they have never allowed girls into their program, which is true for the most part. But for now, they are allowing the girls into the main program while being in separate troops, and letting Cub Scout troop packs going full co-ed for the past 6 years. Most people did not know that the BSA had been allowing girls into higher venture programs of venturing, which was Explorers until the 1990s, which is where teenage boys and girls in the age of 14 to 21 would go basically on different programs throughout the scouting. Many of the anger that the BSA were getting were from a deep-rooted ideas of what the BSA stands for. The fact that they are allowing girls into a program that was originally developed to give young boys the same tools to succeed in the modern world. The anger seen from the president were the same reasons why the scouting movement was started in the in the first place with how men were seeing themselves in that changing world and how they saw their boys were handling it too. The BSA's popularity got started in the early 20th century, where it would combine the ideas of muscular Christianity, the nature cure, and the leadership development of young men as found in many of the early scouting-like organizations that would have influenced Sir Baden-Powell's book Scouting for Boys in 1908. Powell took the elements of woodcraft Indians and combined it with the organization of the British Army when he founded the Boy Scouts Association in 1907. Later in 1910 is when the American Scouting Organization was started, which took the influence of Dan Beard, Ernest Thompson Seton, and Sir Baden-Powell by adapting it to what the modern America needs. This is where we can start to understand the history of the Boy Scouts of America, along how it fit in American culture, with how they managed to separate themselves apart from the other emerging youth organizations by examining the work of the two big founders. The two founders had their own ideas and approaches to mentoring and teaching the next generation of young boys, but they agreed on one thing. The great outdoors is the best use to educating and mentoring on the coming generation on how to become a man in an ever-changing world. But they had their own different methods, which begins the first question of what did each of the two BSA founders brought to the table when they were establishing their own scouting-like organization. Ernest Thomas Seton is a famous British-American naturalist, artist, and author who is well known for his books about animals and trapping the Mexican gray wolf named Lobo in the territory of New Mexico. He has a very interesting view on politics with thoughts on utopian socialism, feminism, and indigenous rights, which got him in trouble with Theodore Roosevelt and many other higher-ups within the BSA organization later in the mid-1910s. Philip Dorrance brought up in his 1998 Playing Indian about how Dan Beard would compare himself and Seton on their stance with youth development and leadership. Not surprisingly, Seton's ego would get the best of him after clashing with both Beard and James E. West over the direction of the BSA during the first 5 years. One of the biggest issues that Seton wanted to do is include more Native American culture into the program. Yeah, I don't know. White people playing Indian is a yikes right now. It is important to note that Seton was approaching the subject at the time with the utmost respect, while still being seen as cultural appropriation right now and at the time. There is another reason why Seton chose Indigenous Americans as the perfect role models for young boys who are just now finding themselves in the world. With Doris noting in his book, Seton was an especially youth-oriented anti-modernist, worried about the decline of America's next generation from a robust, manly, self-reliant boyhood into a lot of flat-chested cigarette smokers with nervous, shaky nerves and doubtful validity. He took the group of young boys that he had caught vandalizing his house and formed a scouting-like organization with woodcraft Indians in 1901. The method for this group was to giving boys with what he believed is a traditional Native American experience that is rooted in respecting the tribe and valuing nature. Benjamin Renee Jordan's 2016 book, The Modern Manhood and the Boy Scouts of America, Citizenship, Race, and the Environment, 1910-1930, wrote how Seton met with the founder of the British Boy Scouts, Sir Baden-Powell, in the United Kingdom back in 1906, and he gave Powell a copy of his book, The Birch Bark Roll of the Woodcraft Indians, containing their constitution, law, games, and deeds. since they were planning to work together on turning Seaton's book into a handbook for the youth in the UK. But they both have conflicting ideas about how should the handbook should be used. Seaton thought it was a good for making boys into men no matter their nationality, while Sir Baden-Powell had a different point of view, which is trying to preserve the British Empire and the promotion of the British Army for young British boys. Sir Baden-Powell took Seaton's ideas for his own book, Scouting for Boys, and would eventually founded the Scouting Association in 1907. Daniel Carter Beard has the least amount of influence with his own group compared to Seaton and Powell, but his legacy can still be felt to this day in how the BSA conducts its program. His own group was known as Beard's Sons of Daniel Boone, which was started in 1905 and would later merge with the BSA after Beard joined the leadership in 1910. This program was more focused on the pioneering aspect of American history and the life of frontiermen like Daniel Boone and Kit Carson. Beard's handbook was focused on more of different white pioneering historical figures and the activities that led to them, with the first chapter describing how should boys operate in this program, with Doris describing how Beard greatly believed that the boys should learn sad life lessons from historic figures from the American frontier, with each of the boys each taking roles in their groups like Kit Carson, Daniel Boone, and Davy Crockett, which would correlate with a certain activity related to the role. Sons of Daniel Boone and Woodcraft Indians both failed to appeal to the modern-day youth since it doesn't connect with the present, with Jordan pointing out that these two groups were too nostalgic and narrow for society. The difference between Beard and Seaton and what Sir Baden-Powell wanted to do with Boy Scouts was to focus on training boys to become future soldiers and army officers for the British military. The American version of Baden-Powell's association would work to weave these two groups to make their own by bringing together the values of the past with the present. This quickly led to problems for the newly formed BSA and its leaders for the directions of moving forward. Jordan and Doris wrote in their own separate books about how Seaton directly challenged the leadership of the newly appointed Chief Scout James West and Beard, and Seaton, with his own ego, didn't help at all since the scouting movement was mainly based on his book that was published in 1902, and he believed he was the one that started it in the first place, despite being William D. Boyle's getting Sir Baden-Powell's approval in the first place. Beard and Seaton both agreed on disliking the appointment of James West, who was hired in 1911 as Chief Scouting Executive, who was later served from 1911 to 1948, and would lead this organization to a totally different directions that was not envisioned by Beard and Seaton. Most of the leadership would continue fighting until 1915, when Ernest Thomas Seaton left the organization, and basically the BSA as a backlash, or more of a celebratory, finally removed most of Seaton's writing about Native American influence. There was also the added bonus of Seaton was an American citizen, and his wife was an active member of the women's suffrage, which added to more reason for why the BSA wanted to separate themselves from Seaton due to his beliefs in anarchism and pacifism during the First World War.